I almost turned around the moment I realized who was lying on the lounge chair ahead of me. Running into your CEO on a public beach wasn't exactly on anyone's list of relaxing afternoon scenarios. But before I could make my quiet escape, the folder beside her caught my attention. After 8 years of dissecting financial statements, you develop an instinct. Numbers speak in patterns, and once you learn their language, you can spot trouble from a distance, even across sun-bleached sand. Claire Townsend was stretched out as if the coastline belonged to her. Black bikini, oversized sunglasses, skin already flushed from too much California sun. She was the founder of Townsend Enterprises, the woman who had built a tech company from nothing into something people respected. Yet right now, she looked like anyone else trying to forget responsibility for a few hours. The difference was that her problems hadn't stayed behind at the office. They were sitting inches from her hand, tucked inside that folder. The breeze kept teasing the papers, lifting corners and letting them fall. One sheet rose higher than the rest, exposing rows of figures and columns of percentages, the kind of data meant for conference rooms, not beach chairs. By the time she noticed me approaching, I was already close enough to read more than I should have. She tilted her head and lowered her sunglasses just enough to see over the rim. Her eyes were sharp green, assessing in the same precise way she studied quarterly reports. "Enjoying the scenery?" she asked. Her tone carried that familiar executive edge, calm, controlled, and faintly challenging. I could have apologized, pretended I'd been staring at the ocean and kept walking. Instead, I met her gaze. "You," I said simply. One corner of her mouth shifted, not quite a smile, more like surprise she refused to admit. She pushed herself upright just as another gust threatened to scatter the documents. I moved automatically, catching several pages before they could escape and aligning them back into order. That was when the inconsistency hit me. Line 6 showed a 42% profit margin, bold, confident, impressive. But 2 rows below, the operating cash flow told a completely different story. They couldn't both be true, not without something hidden underneath. I held the page steady against the wind. "Line 6, I said. "Your margin doesn't reconcile with your cash movement. Someone buried a discrepancy in the depreciation schedule." The shift in her was immediate. The relaxed beachgoer vanished, the CEO surfaced in her place, posture sharpening, attention narrowing. "Who are you?" she asked. "Derek Walsh, Senior Analyst, Finance." She studied my face as if searching her memory. She wouldn't find me there. In companies her size, most employees existed only as names in databases. "You can read statements that fast," she said. "I've spent 8 years untangling financial problems," I replied, tapping the bottom of the page. "Wrong amortization method. Your asset line is compensating for missing cash. On paper it looks stable, but the foundation doesn't match." She stood, pulling a lightweight white cover-up from her bag and wrapping it around herself without ever breaking eye contact. "Do you know why I'm here?" she asked. "Taking a break from the office," I offered. "My CFO resigned yesterday." Her voice stayed level, but tension lived underneath it. "One of my board members, Trevor Harding, is pushing for an emergency audit. He claims I mishandled our last major investment. If he proves it, I lose control of my company." The folder trembled slightly in her hand, not fear but tightly contained fury. "You brought work to the beach," I said. "I needed distance to think," she replied, "and apparently I needed someone who could actually see what's wrong." She pulled out her phone. "How quickly can you start looking into this?" I glanced at the papers, then back at her, immediately. She gave a single decisive nod. "My rental house is 2 minutes up the path, come with me." And just like that, a casual afternoon at the shore turned into something else entirely. The path from the beach to the houses above the cliffs was narrow and lined with dry grass that whispered against our legs as we walked. Claire moved ahead without hesitation, barefoot on the warm stone, her pace quick but controlled, the same decisive rhythm she carried through office corridors. I followed half a step behind, still aware of how improbable this felt. An hour ago I'd been another anonymous employee on vacation. Now I was climbing a private path with the CEO of my company because I'd spotted a buried accounting inconsistency on her beach paperwork. The house appeared around a bend in the path, low, modern, all glass and pale wood, perched just high enough to command a full view of the ocean. It wasn't ostentatious, it was precise, minimal, expensive in the way only carefully chosen things are expensive. Claire unlocked the door and stepped inside, dropping the folder onto a long dining table that clearly doubled as a workspace. Sunlight poured through the windows, scattering reflections across polished surfaces. The interior smelled faintly of salt and citrus cleaner. "Water?" she asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "Sure." She handed me a cold glass without ceremony and pulled out a chair. The casual beach ease was gone now. She was fully in executive mode, focus sharp, movements efficient, attention fixed on the documents between us. "Show me," she said. I opened the folder and spread the key sheets across the table, anchoring the corners with a ceramic bowl and her phone to stop the breeze from shifting them. Up close, the issue was even clearer. "Here," I said, tracing a column with my finger. "Your reported margin spike starts the same quarter your capital expenditure jumped. That's not inherently wrong, but look at depreciation." I slid another page beside it. "They changed schedules, extended asset life by 3 years." Her eyes narrowed, "Which inflates profit." "Exactly, but cash didn't change, so to keep balance someone adjusted asset valuation, that hides the gap temporarily." I tapped the bottom line, "But the underlying cash shortfall is still there." She leaned closer, shoulder nearly touching mine as she scanned the figures. Her hair, still slightly damp from the ocean air, brushed my arm. She didn't seem to notice. Her focus had tunneled entirely into the numbers. "Could this be error?" she asked. "Not at this scale," I said. "This is deliberate smoothing. Someone needed your margins to look stronger than they were." Her jaw tightened. "Trevor." "Possibly," I said carefully, "but the execution is internal, CFO level or above. Whoever approved this understood your reporting structure." Silence settled over the table for a moment, filled only by distant surf hitting rock below the cliffs. "If Harding proves manipulation," she said quietly, "he can call a shareholder vote. I lose controlling stake." I glanced at her. "Did you authorize any of these changes?" "No," the answer came instantly. Then, after a beat, "I would never risk the company's financial integrity to win a board fight." "I believe you," I said. She looked up sharply at that, something unreadable passing through her expression, surprise mixed with relief she didn't intend to show. "Then you're the only other person who's seen this clearly," she said. "Which means I need more than confirmation, I need proof." I nodded slowly. "We'd need full ledger access, asset registry, capex approvals, internal correspondence." "You'll have it," she said, no hesitation. "Everything." That was the moment the dynamic shifted again. Not CEO and employee, not stranger and boss, but co-conspirators against the same hidden problem. She gathered the papers into a tighter stack and met my eyes. "Derek," she said, voice low but steady, "if someone inside my company is trying to remove me, I want to know exactly who, and exactly how." I held her gaze. "Then we'll find it." Outside, the ocean kept moving in endless rhythm, indifferent to corporate power struggles and balance sheets. But inside the glass-walled house above the cliffs, the first pieces of a much larger financial deception had just fallen into place. By the time we left the rental house, the sun had already begun its slow drop toward the horizon. The light over the ocean had turned molten, gold melting into copper. Claire locked the door with the same crisp finality she used to end meetings, then turned to me. "We fly back tonight," she said. It wasn't a question. I blinked once. "Tonight?" "Yes." She slipped her sunglasses back on, though the brightness had softened. "The longer Harding believes I'm unaware, the more room he has to move. I want control of the narrative before he escalates." That was the difference between executives and everyone else, I thought. Most people reacted to crises. Claire preempted them. "I'll arrange access," she continued, already pulling up something on her phone. "You'll have temporary clearance above your grade, direct to finance servers, internal audit archives, legal holds if needed." "That's significant authority," I said. "It's necessary authority." She glanced at me. "You're either the analyst who spotted what my entire leadership team missed, or you're wrong. I intend to find out which immediately." Fair. 2 hours later we were at the small regional airport, trading sea air for conditioned terminal chill. Claire moved through priority lines with effortless familiarity. I followed with the strange awareness that, in the span of an afternoon, my role in the company had shifted in ways no promotion ever could. On the plane, she didn't open a laptop. She didn't review documents. She sat still, eyes closed, conserving energy like a strategist before battle. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop reconstructing the numbers in my head. Extended depreciation alone wouldn't justify the scale of distortion we'd seen. That meant layered adjustments, asset reclassification, possibly delayed write-downs, maybe even redirected capex reporting. It wasn't just margin cosmetics, it was structural manipulation. Which meant motive. And opportunity. And access. Walk me through it, Claire said suddenly, eyes still closed. I turned slightly in my seat. If Harding wants to remove you, he needs governance grounds. Financial misrepresentation is the cleanest route, not criminal, just fiduciary breach. Her eyes opened. So he engineers weak performance, then blames me for hiding it. Or exaggerates weakness already there, I said. Either way, the depreciation shift suggests someone with policy override authority that narrows suspects. CFO, she said. Former CFO, I corrected. If he resigned yesterday, timing matters. Changes started earlier, he may be shield or scapegoat. She studied me for a moment. You think this goes beyond him? Yes. A slow exhale, not surprise, confirmation of something she'd already feared. Then we proceed quietly, she said. No alerts, no internal questions, we observe before anyone knows we're looking. I nodded. We pull raw ledgers first, system logs if possible, version histories on asset schedules. You'll have ghost access by morning, she said. Officially you're assigned to strategic review under my office, unofficially her gaze held mine. You report only to me. The plane hummed steadily around us, cabin lights dimmed. For the first time since the beach, the reality of proximity settled in. Not physical, though that too, but structural. Trust at this level inside a corporation wasn't given lightly, and never to someone at my tier. You realize, I said quietly, if this explodes, I'm professionally finished. Her expression didn't change. Yes. Honest, unsparing. Then, after a beat, so am I. Something unspoken locked into place between us, not loyalty exactly, not yet, but alignment. When we landed, night had already taken the city. Headquarters rose from the financial district in glass and steel geometry, lights still burning across upper floors. Townsend Enterprises never truly slept. Claire's car met us at the curb. The driver didn't ask questions. Elevators recognized her access automatically, carrying us upward in silent acceleration. The executive floor at night felt different, quieter, stripped of daytime performance. No assistants, no meetings, no movement, just architecture, shadow, and power. Her office doors opened on biometric scan. She stepped inside and crossed directly to her desk. Sit, she said, already logging into her terminal. Multiple screens woke at once, financial dashboards, internal systems, secure channels. She navigated them with speed born of years. Then she turned one monitor toward me. Your access begins now. I leaned forward, hands settling on the keyboard of the CEO's system, an act that would have been unthinkable that morning. Let's see, I said, pulling up the asset registry history. Who's been rewriting your company? Behind us, through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the city glowed cold and vast. Somewhere inside those millions of lights was the person who had started this manipulation. And we had just begun looking. The executive floor after midnight felt less like an office and more like a control center suspended above the city. Most lights were off. Only Claire's office and the adjacent strategy suite remained illuminated, glass walls turning the rooms into islands of white and shadow. I scrolled through the asset registry history while system timestamps populated the side panel in precise columns: date, user ID, authorization level, revision type. At first glance, everything looked routine. Scheduled depreciation updates, periodic valuation reviews, standard entries. Then the pattern emerged. Here, I said. Claire stepped closer to the screen. What am I seeing? Revision clustering, I replied. I highlighted a series of entries. Major asset life extensions all occur within narrow time windows, same weeks, same reporting cycles, but across different divisions. Her eyes tracked the rows, coordinated. Yes, organic changes scatter, these are synchronized. I opened metadata, and they're executed under delegated authority tokens. She frowned, meaning someone isn't using their own credentials, They're pushing revisions through temporary authorization chains. I tapped a field. Executive override, originating from finance administration pool. Silence stretched a moment. That pool includes the CFO, she said. And 2 senior controllers, I added, plus any executive granted time-bound authority. Her gaze sharpened, including me. I glanced at her. Did you authorize any batch asset life adjustments in the last year? No. Then someone operated under your shadow. She folded her arms, looking at the data again, not shocked, not angry yet, calculating. Can we isolate which token instance was used? She asked. Trying. I drilled deeper into the logs. Version trees unfolded, branch histories showing each revision lineage. Most converged normally back to known user accounts. One didn't. It branched repeatedly, hopping credentials across approvals in a way that looked legitimate unless you mapped sequence flow. I zoomed in. There, I said quietly. See the chain, controller approval, then executive proxy, then finance admin execution. Claire leaned in, shoulder brushing mine again. That sequence is reversed. Yes, I nodded. Execution should follow authorization, here it precedes it. Someone ran the change first, then backfilled approvals. Her voice dropped, forgery inside system logic. Exactly, not altering numbers directly, altering permission trail. She straightened slowly. That requires architecture knowledge, deep. Finance systems team, I said, or someone who directed them. I pulled the token origin details. User attribution resolved. We both read the name at the same time. Claire's stillness changed quality, like glass under stress. Evan Ross, she said. I exhaled, senior controller. Handpicked by Harding 2 years ago, she added. That aligned too cleanly to ignore. But correlation wasn't proof. Before we conclude, I said, we check scope. If Ross is origin, his tokens should appear across all suspect revisions. I ran a cross-reference query. The system processed for several seconds, progress bar inching across the screen. Matches populated. Dozens. Different quarters, different divisions, same proxy chain signature. Same origin node. Ross. Claire's hand settled on the back of my chair, fingers tense against the leather. He's been rewriting asset life across the company, she said. Not alone, I replied. He has override access beyond controller grade, someone elevated him. She didn't answer immediately. Because we both knew who could. Harding didn't need direct system presence. A loyal controller with borrowed authority was safer. Plausible deniability built into architecture. Claire moved away from the desk and toward the window, city lights reflecting across the glass in fractured lines. If Ross falls, she said, Harding claims rogue controller, I still look negligent. Yes. So Ross is instrument, she said, not architect. I turned in the chair, agreed. She faced the city a moment longer, then spoke without turning. Can we prove intent beyond Ross? I looked back at the screen. The branching chains, the token hops, the silent evidence embedded in timestamps. Maybe, I said, if we find who granted him persistent proxy rights. She turned then, that record exists. It has too, I said, privilege escalation always leaves a root. Her eyes locked onto mine, find it. I nodded once and reopened the permission architecture layer, the deepest tier most analysts never touched. Access trees expanded slowly, nested authority structures, unfolding like circuitry. Controllers, finance admin, executive proxies. Then the escalation ledger. I scrolled. Paused. Scrolled back. Claire, I said quietly. She was beside me instantly. What? I pointed to the root grant entry. Her name was there. But the authorization timestamp was impossible. Granted while she was overseas during a documented investor tour. Meaning the escalation that empowered Ross had been issued in her identity without her presence. Claire read it twice. When she spoke, her voice was very calm. Someone is not only manipulating my company, she said, they're doing it wearing my authorization. I met her gaze, which means the attack isn't financial first. A beat. It's structural, she finished. We looked back at the screen together, the digital trail now unmistakable. Ross was inside the system. Harding was above the board. But whoever had forged Claire's executive grant had reached the level where corporate control itself could be rewritten. And we had just crossed from accounting irregularity into corporate sabotage. For several seconds after we saw the forged authorization, neither of us spoke. The office felt different now, not just quiet but exposed, as if the glass walls no longer kept anything out. Claire was the first to move. Pull Ross's activity windows, she said. Physical presence, logins, network nodes. I want to know where he actually is when these changes occur. I shifted back to the console. If he's careful, he'll stagger locations. Careful people still have habits, she said. Find them. I accessed building entry logs and cross-linked them with his credential usage. The system overlaid badge scans, workstation IDs, VPN endpoints. Data points began to align. A pattern surfaced within minutes. He works late, I said, consistently but not from his assigned floor. Where? I rotated the screen toward her. Archive Finance Suite, Sublevel 2. Her brows drew together. No one uses that anymore. Exactly, I pulled facility maps. Legacy record storage, old servers, minimal traffic, no oversight cameras except corridor entry. Blind space, she said. Controlled blind space, I corrected. Still badge restricted, only finance admin and controllers. She considered that, then asked, is he there now? I checked live network presence. Active session, yes. Node sublevel 2 terminal cluster. Time 0114. I looked up, yes. Claire didn't hesitate, we're going. I blinked once personally. If he's executing live, I want to see how, she said, already moving toward the door. No alerts, no IT traces, observation only. I logged the session snapshot and locked the console. If he notices us. He won't, she said. No one expects the CEO to walk into an abandoned archive at 1 a.m. Fair point. The executive elevator required her biometric again. We descended past occupied floors into levels most employees never saw. The lighting shifted colder. Air carried that dry, filtered scent of storage and machinery. Sublevel 2 opened into a corridor of concrete and sealed doors. Motion lights activated in sequence as we walked, each step echoing softly. Claire stopped before the archive suite entrance and glanced at me. We observe, she repeated quietly. No confrontation. I nodded. She scanned access. The lock released with a muted click. Inside, the space stretched deeper than I expected, rows of inactive workstations, server racks humming in low standby, shelves of boxed records. Only one zone was lit. At the far end, a terminal glowed. And someone seated at it. Evan Ross. He hadn't noticed us. Head slightly forward, shoulders rounded in concentration, fingers moving in controlled bursts across the keyboard. Multiple system windows were open, permission layers, asset tables, authorization trees. I felt Claire go still beside me. We moved silently behind a row of shelving, angled just enough to see his screen reflected faintly on a dark monitor opposite him. He wasn't adjusting numbers. He was generating authorization tokens. I narrowed my focus. He initiated an executive proxy request. Then paused. A second credential appeared in the chain. Not his. Not Claire's. A third identity injected temporary approval. Then Ross executed the asset revision under that composite authority, exactly the reverse sequence we'd seen in logs. My pulse ticked up. He's not forging alone, I whispered. Someone feeds him elevated credentials in real time. Claire's voice was barely audible. Can you see who? I leaned a fraction closer, eyes tracking the mirrored text. The injected credential resolved for half a second before collapsing into token hash. But it was enough. I read the names and felt the realization land cold. Claire saw my expression immediately. Who? I turned my head toward her, keeping my voice almost soundless. Not Harding, I said. Her eyes sharpened. Then who? I held her gaze a beat, because what I'd seen changed everything about the power structure we thought we understood. It's coming from your executive office, I said quietly. A flicker of disbelief crossed her face. Impossible. I angled my eyes back to Ross's screen. Credential origin, Office of the CEO, Secondary Executive Delegate. Her voice dropped to a whisper edged with steel. There is only one secondary delegate. Yes. We both looked back at Ross. He completed the revision, closed the session, and began wiping local traces with practiced efficiency. Not panicked, routine. Which meant this wasn't new. This was ongoing. Systematic. Institutional. Claire's hand closed lightly around my wrist, steadying, not seeking support. Her gaze never left Ross. Derek, she said very softly, we are not confronting him. I agreed. We leave, she continued, now before he finishes. We retreated the way we came. Silent steps, shelves shielding movement, door resealing behind us with another muted click. Only once we were back in the corridor did she stop. The overhead light cast sharp lines across her face. Shock was there, but beneath it something harder. Calculation under betrayal. Say it, she said. I did. The credential Ross is using, I said quietly, belongs to your chief operating officer. The words settled between us like a fracture line. Her COO. Her second in command. The one person with legitimate delegated authority to act in her name. Claire inhaled once, slow and controlled. Then she said, we just discovered that the attack on my company is coming from inside my own executive leadership. I nodded. And in that sterile underground corridor, far below the sleeping offices of Townsend Enterprises, the investigation shifted again. From financial manipulation to executive conspiracy. We didn't speak again until the elevator doors closed. Only then did Claire let the composure crack, just slightly. She leaned back against the metal wall, eyes unfocused for a fraction of a second, processing at speed. My COO, she said quietly, more to herself than to me. He's been with me since year 3. I didn't interrupt. In corporate betrayals, history mattered almost as much as motive. When she looked at me again, the CEO was fully back. Timeline, she said. How long has Ross been receiving those credentials? At least 4 quarters, I replied. Probably longer, we only tracked confirmed revisions. Token patterns suggest maturity. Meaning practice, she said. Yes. The elevator chimed softly as we reached the executive floor. Doors opened to the same glass and shadow quiet we'd left, but the space felt altered now. Every office behind every wall potentially compromised. Claire walked directly back into her office and closed the doors manually this time instead of relying on autoseal. A small detail. Noted. She crossed to her desk but didn't sit. Hands braced on the surface, gaze lowered in thought. His name is Adrian Cole, she said at last. Chief Operating Officer, full operational authority, my delegated signatory when I'm absent. I nodded once, which matches the credential class we saw. She lifted her head. Adrian doesn't need to steal my authority, he already has his own. True, I said, which means using yours has purpose. Her eyes narrowed. Frame me. Yes. The word hung between us, clean, brutal, accurate. If financial manipulation traced to CEO authorization, governance removal became trivial. Harding wouldn't need proof of intent, only signature trail. And Adrian, as COO, would appear the loyal executive exposing it. Claire exhaled slowly. They're building a case where I look reckless with controls. And Adrian looks responsible for discovering it, I said. Succession narrative, she finished. Exactly. She moved to the window, staring out over the dark city again. When she spoke, her voice had cooled to strategic precision. We assume Adrian and Harding are aligned. Agreed. We assume Ross is operational instrument. Yes. We assume internal systems may be monitored. Highly likely, I said. If Adrian controls operations, he can flag anomalies, including unusual access tied to you. She turned back, which means our investigation must appear to stop. I considered that. You want them to believe we saw nothing. Yes. Then we need visible normalcy, I said. No audit triggers, no permission reviews, no Ross contact. She nodded, and no change in my behavior toward Adrian. That's critical, I said. If he suspects exposure, he accelerates. Silence settled as both of us mapped implications. Then Claire said, we need independent proof tying Adrian to the forged grants. Not inference, not proximity. I thought of the mirrored credential injection, visible for half a second. There may be a way, I said slowly. Her attention locked in. Explain. Ross receives Adrian's delegate credential in real time, I said. That means active session handoff or remote authorization relay. Yes. If we capture the relay event at source, I continued, we link Adrian directly to the unauthorized chain. Her eyes sharpened. Where is the source? Executive authorization server, I said. Separate from finance systems, controlled by operations security. Which meant Adrian's domain. Claire's mouth curved slightly, not humor, recognition of risk. So to prove my COO is forging my authority, she said, we must access the one system he fully controls. Yes. A long beat. Then she said very quietly, good. The word carried steel. Can we do it without detection? She asked. Not through normal access, I said. Requests log, queries log, even metadata views log. Then abnormal, she said. I met her gaze. We'd need physical proximity to the authorization node, direct capture before encryption. She didn't hesitate. Where? Secure server room, operations tier, level -1. Her eyes flicked once, she knew the space. Adrian has primary clearance, she said. I have theoretical override, but entry alerts him automatically. Then you can't enter, I said. She held my gaze, but you might. I understood immediately. Analyst clearance didn't trigger executive alerts. Maintenance windows, off-hour access, if scheduled plausibly. It's possible, I said, but if I'm seen. You're performing delegated financial infrastructure review, she said instantly. My authorization. Which Adrian can check. Yes, she said, but only after. Meaning the window would be brief. Dangerous. Potentially career-ending. I felt the weight of it, and the strange steadiness underneath. When? I asked. Tomorrow night, she said. Adrian attends the Asia operations call. 90 minutes locked in conference suite, he never leaves early. Predictable, useful. She stepped closer then, stopping within arm's reach. The distance between CEO and analyst had dissolved somewhere in the night's discoveries. Derek, she said, voice low, if we do this there is no internal protection for you. I know. No procedural shield, she continued. No deniability. I know. Her gaze searched mine, not for competence this time but commitment. Why are you still here? She asked quietly. It wasn't a challenge. It was genuine. I answered just as quietly, because someone tried to take your company using your own name. A pause. Something shifted in her expression, trust crossing from professional into something more personal, though neither of us named it. She gave one small nod. Then tomorrow, she said. I nodded back. Tomorrow. Outside the glass, the city kept burning with indifferent light. But inside the executive office of Townsend Enterprises, the counterstrike against its own leadership had just been set in motion. The operations level sat one floor below executive administration, close enough to be central, far enough to be controlled. Most employees never knew it existed. Fewer still had reason to enter. At 21:12 the next night I did. The corridor lighting here was brighter than the archives, clinical white across brushed steel and composite panels. Cameras were visible, not hidden. Every 10 meters, every door. Operations didn't rely on obscurity. It relied on accountability. Which meant every step I took was recorded. Claire's authorization letter, legitimate, time-bound and deliberately vague, sat in the system under infrastructure review. It would justify entry, it would not justify loitering. My badge opened the first checkpoint. A soft chime, green ring. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately. Server cooling, airflow constant and low, rows of secure racks extended behind glass partitions, status LEDs blinking in steady asynchronous rhythm. I kept my pace even, analysts didn't sneak, they verified. The authorization server cluster was in a sealed alcove at the rear, operations tier, elevated clearance. My badge alone wouldn't open it. I stopped at the console beside the door and initiated the review ticket Claire had seeded 2 hours earlier. The system cross-checked credentials, scope, approval chain. For 3 seconds nothing happened. Then, delegated executive authorization, accepted. The lock disengaged. Adrian's domain had just admitted me under Claire's authority. I entered. The alcove was smaller, denser, acoustically muted by equipment hum. 3 primary racks, 1 hardened console, no windows, no alternate exits. I checked the time. 21:19. Adrian's Asia call had begun at 21:00. Historically, he stayed fully engaged through 22:30. Window, approximately 70 minutes. I didn't need that long. I seated at the console and connected a diagnostic capture module from my kit, standard infrastructure hardware but repurposed. It wouldn't alter systems. It would mirror authorization traffic locally before encryption. If Adrian relayed credentials to Ross during this window, we'd have it. I initiated passive capture. Streams populated, authentication pings, token refresh cycles, routine executive sessions across the company. Noise, expected. I filtered to Adrian Cole's credential class. Active session, yes. Location, conference suite level 3. Status, persistent. Good. Now I waited. The hardest part of covert technical work isn't intrusion. It's stillness. Minutes passed in low mechanical hum, cooling fans, LED flicker, my own breathing too loud in my ears. Then, a spike. Authorization request burst from Adrian's session. Destination, finance admin proxy. My pulse kicked once. I expanded the stream. The sequence unfolded exactly as we'd seen in Ross's mirrored screen. Adrian's delegate credential generating temporary executive token, wrapped in Claire's authority signature, transmitted outward. But this time I saw the source handshake. Direct. Unmasked. I locked capture. Time-stamped, credential signed, chain intact. Proof. Clear, structural, undeniable. Adrian Cole was issuing forged CEO-level authorizations in real time. I exhaled slowly and secured the packet. That's when the outer door opened. The sound was small, just a seal release, but in the contained alcove it hit like a gunshot. I froze. Footsteps entered the operations room outside, not hurried, not random, directed. Toward the authorization alcove. Adrian's call shouldn't end for another hour. Which meant only one thing. Alert. Somewhere something had flagged access to his server. The handle moved. I pulled the capture module free, killed the mirror session, and wiped console trace in one practice sequence. No time for elegance, only disappearance. The door began to open. No exit behind me. No cover except racks. I stepped into the narrow gap between the primary server column and wall, just as the door cleared. Shoes crossed the threshold. Polished leather, executive cut. Adrian Cole himself. He moved directly to the console, unaware of me less than a meter away behind the rack spine. His reflection ghosted faintly in the brushed metal panel, face composed, eyes sharp, attention already scanning system status. He'd come fast. Faster than expected. Which meant the alert had been immediate. He touched the console. Paused. A long second. Then another. I watched the microtension in his jaw as he read whatever residual traces remained. If he saw the capture. Finished. My career, Claire's position, the investigation, all gone in one security call. Adrian's fingers moved. He opened authorization logs. Scrolled. Stopped. Silence thickened the air between machines. Then he leaned closer to the screen. and smiled. Not relief. Recognition. He knew someone had been here. He just didn't know who. Interesting, he said softly to the empty room. I didn't breathe. He reviewed for another 10 seconds, then closed the session. No alarm, no call, no sweep. Which meant something worse. He preferred to watch. To see who moved next. Adrian turned and left the alcove, door sealing behind him with its quiet magnetic lock. I stayed in the narrow gap, heart still hammering, counting seconds. 10, 20, 30. Only when the outer room lights returned to idle pattern did I step out. Window gone. Operation burned. But in my hand, inside the capture module clipped against my palm, was the proof that could destroy a COO. I exited the authorization room under the same recorded cameras as before, pace steady, expression neutral, analyst performing review. But upstairs, above glass and steel and executive titles, the internal war inside Townsend Enterprises had just escalated from covert investigation to open counterintelligence. Clea was still in her office when I returned. The lights were low, city reflections sliding across the glass behind her. She stood at the window exactly ka aka per orsha el orikratkoi en orche yeriu, but this time the stillness wasn't contemplation. It was waiting. She turned the moment the door closed behind me. Her eyes went first to my face, then to my hands. Did you get it? She asked. I held up the capture module. Yes. The breath she released was controlled, but the relief inside it was unmistakable. She crossed the room in 3 steps and cleared space on her desk. Show me. I connected the module to her secure terminal and decrypted the packet. Raw authorization traffic unfolded across the screen, time-stamped, signed, chained. Adrian's credential. Clea's forged authority layer. Transmission to finance proxy. Execution path identical to Ross's revisions. I stepped back slightly so she could read. She didn't move for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, he used my name to attack me. Yes. She scrolled the sequence again, slower this time. Executives learn to read patterns differently than analysts, less math, more intent. He's not hiding it deeply, she said, just enough. He expects no one to look at route traffic, I said, only outputs. Her gaze lifted, or he expects anyone who does to already be aligned. Meaning trust perimeter, inner circle. I nodded. She straightened, composure resetting into something colder than anger. This is removal architecture, she said. Ross manipulates numbers, Adrian supplies authority. Harding claims governance failure, board removes me. Adrian stabilizes operations. And likely becomes interim CEO, I said. Yes. Silence settled a beat. Then I said, there's a problem. Her eyes narrowed, explain. Adrian knows someone accessed the authorization server, I said. He came in person, checked logs, didn't raise alarm. She stilled, he saw traces. Yes. Did he identify you? No, but he knows intrusion occurred. Her expression shifted, calculating several layers ahead, so he will not stop. No, I said, he'll accelerate, either finalize the financial case or flush the investigator. Meaning you, she said. Most likely, I said. Another silence. Then we move before he does. I met her gaze, how? She turned back to the screen, staring at the proof packet again. When she spoke, the strategy was already formed. We don't expose Adrian, she said. I blinked once, what? Not yet, she continued. If we accuse now, he Denny's claims fabrication invokes Harding, board divides, evidence gets buried in process. True, executive conflicts rarely resolve cleanly. So instead, she said, we let him proceed. Realization clicked. You want him to commit further. Yes. Claire, he's already framing you. And he believes he remains unseen, she said, which is advantage. She turned to me fully. We create space for him to act again, larger, clearer, publicly traceable. A controlled exposure, I said slowly. Yes. Risk surged through the idea. That means letting Ross continue manipulating numbers. For a short window, she said, under observation. And Adrian issuing more forged authority, I added. She nodded, which we capture repeatedly. I saw the shape now, pattern-proof, escalation chain, intent undeniable. But also, he may move against me, I said. Her gaze locked hard. He will. No comfort in the statement, only truth. If Adrian suspects you, she continued, he removes access, credibility or position. Quietly, efficiently. Termination, I said. Or worse, she said. Internal misconduct allegation, data breach, conflict of interest, anything that discredits your analysis. She was right, corporate countermeasures rarely looked like warfare, they looked like HR. I leaned against the desk edge, so I stay visible. Yes. Continue normal work. Yes. While he watches. Yes. And we bait him. Her eyes held mine, exactly. The room felt smaller suddenly, not physically but in stakes. We were planning to provoke a COO who had already shown willingness to forge CEO authority and restructure financial reality. Claire's voice softened, not weaker but more personal. Derek, she said, you can step out now. With this proof alone I can begin internal containment. I shook my head once. Adrian would still control operations, he'd suppress before board review. Yes, she said. So exposure still requires pattern, I said. Yes. And someone inside to capture it. Her gaze searched mine again, the same question as the night before but deeper now. Why stay? I answered before she asked. Because if he removes you, I said quietly, everything we've seen gets rewritten as your failure. A long second. Then something shifted in her expression, not just trust now, but alignment hardened by shared risk. She reached out, very briefly, and closed her fingers around the edge of the capture module between us. Our leverage, she said. Yes. She released it and straightened. Then we proceed, she said. You return to standard duties tomorrow, no change in behavior, no restricted access. And you, I asked. I meet Adrian at 08:30, she said. Weekly operations review, I behave exactly as always. Meaning no accusation, no signal, no suspicion. Predator calm. I nodded. She dimmed the screen, sealing the proof file into encrypted storage only she could access. When she looked back at me, the distance between CEO and analyst had shifted again. Less hierarchy now, more co-strategists inside the same threat field. From this point, she said quietly, Adrian believes he is hunting. I met her gaze and he's not. No, she said. A beat. We are. Outside, the city lights stretched endless and indifferent. But inside the top floor of Townsend Enterprises, a counter-trap had just been set for the man running its operations. And somewhere in the building below, Adrian Cole had already begun to wonder. Who had touched his server? The next morning arrived quiet, almost deceptively calm. The sun glinted off the glass exterior of Townsend Enterprises, painting long reflections across the lobby floor. From the outside, the company looked pristine, efficient, in control, untouched. Inside, the tension was tangible, almost suffocating. Claire arrived early, tailored suit, heels silent on polished stone. She didn't glance at the receptionist, didn't nod to assistants. Every step was deliberate. Her eyes scanned the open-plan floor from above, calculating, assessing. Derek followed behind, keeping to the shadows, letting her lead. Temporary badge, neutral expression, just another figure moving among the staff. But Claire moved like a predator among prey, even before the hunt had begun. Adrian was waiting. He stood near the conference room door, posture relaxed, hands clasped loosely behind his back. A soft smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. He knew someone had been in the server, he had felt it, but he didn't know who, and that made him dangerous. Good morning, Miss Townsend, he said smoothly, his tone all civility. We have a few operational matters to review, shall we? Of course, Claire replied, calm and unwavering. Derek stayed slightly behind, watching every micro-expression, every twitch. They entered the room, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture. The city sprawled below, indifferent. Adrian sat at the head of the table, fingers drumming softly on the polished surface. Claire took her usual seat opposite him. Derek positioned himself near the entrance, discreetly observing staff and potential witnesses, a silent guardian. Adrian opened his laptop. "Let's start with yesterday's transaction reconciliations," he said. His eyes flicked briefly to Claire, searching for a sign of weakness. Nothing. Her composure was perfect, too perfect. Minutes passed, numbers, reports, spreadsheets. Claire responded clearly, confidently, just as she always did. But Derek noticed the slight tremor in Adrian's hands when he scrolled too quickly through the logs. The first cracks. "You've streamlined these operations well," Adrian said smoothly, voice neutral. "But there are anomalies in the reports, perhaps human error." Claire didn't react. "I review every entry personally," she said. "Mistakes are flagged immediately." Adrian leaned back, studying her. "Impressive, though mistakes do happen." "Yes," Claire said, "and that's why there are layers of verification. We never rely on a single view of data." Adrian smiled faintly. Of course, redundancy is key. He didn't notice Derek's hand on his tablet, just slightly nudging it to the side, checking for open sessions in the background. Every signal monitored. Every step calculated. Adrian remained unaware that every move he made in the room could be traced, documented, leveraged. The subtle psychological duel escalated. Adrian tested boundaries, probing, insinuating, attempting to rattle Claire with hints about reports, governance, potential board scrutiny. Every verbal poke was countered with calm precision, an unflinching barrier. Finally, Claire leaned slightly forward. "Adrian, I appreciate your concerns, but I assure you Townsend Enterprises does not operate on assumptions. Every claim, every report is verifiable. If there's an issue, it will be documented and addressed." Adrian's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. He realized the power had subtly shifted. He couldn't see Derek, but he could sense the silent surveillance. He didn't know that every step he took could be reconstructed, every authorization traced back to him. He made a choice, a subtle retreat. "Very well," he said, voice measured. "I trust your methods for now." Claire didn't smile, she didn't need to. Victory wasn't in words, it was in control. Derek exhaled slightly, unseen. The trap was set. Adrian had taken the bait, and the game had entered a new phase, where leverage, proof, and patience would dictate who moved first. Outside the windows, the city carried on, oblivious. Inside, the war over Townsend Enterprises' future had only just begun. Once the conference room cleared, Claire didn't relax. She remained at her desk, back straight, eyes scanning the city below. Derek set the capture module between them, carefully opening the encrypted files on her secure terminal. The proof was laid bare. Adrian's forged CEO authorizations, timestamped chains, and manipulated finance records. Every session, every token, every delegation captured in full detail. "I need to understand the full scope," Claire said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but Derek could hear the tension beneath. "He's not just forging approvals. He's creating patterns, building a pretext for my removal." "Exactly," Derek said. "Ross manipulates the numbers, Adrian legitimizes them. If we act prematurely, it looks like accusation without proof. Board divides, he wins." Claire's fingers drummed lightly on the desk. "So we don't confront him directly yet, we wait, let him escalate, document every move." "That's the plan," Derek said. "We need an operational window, capture every false authorization, every attempted interference. We create a timeline. Evidence becomes undeniable." Her eyes narrowed. "And the risk? If Adrian realizes he's being monitored, he could accelerate removal or fabricate an incident." Derek nodded. "We mitigate with visibility. I stay in the flow of operations. Neutral, observant. No anomalies in my behavior. He can't see me coming until it's too late." Claire leaned back. "You're talking about a high-stakes chess game. One wrong move and the board collapses." "Yes," Derek said, "but the data is ours, and if we play it right, we control the narrative. We force exposure on our terms." She stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I've spent years building defenses, controlling perception. But Adrian, he's testing weaknesses I didn't know existed." "You have one now," Derek said quietly. "He thinks he's untouchable. He doesn't know the capture exists. Every forged authorization is a trap waiting to be sprung." Claire's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "And you've been there through the shadows, unseen, gidding, observing." Derek shrugged. "I've done this since I was 23. Spot patterns, trace anomalies, correct errors no one else notices. You build walls, I find gaps, together it works. She turned, expression firm again. Then we proceed, controlled exposure, observation, documentation, no public accusation until we're untouchable. Exactly, Derek said, and while he thinks he's hunting, we're setting the final board. Claire exhaled slowly. 3 key priorities. First, maintain operational normalcy. Second, capture and timestamp every forgery or manipulation. Third, protect internal perception, no leaks, no panic, no advantage to him. Derek pointed to the terminal. All captured, already documented. Every token, timestamp, chain intact. We can replay sequences, create the timeline, prove intent. Claire studied the data carefully. We need redundancy, copies, secure backups, everything encrypted. If Adrian finds a single trace, he'll delete or fabricate. Already done, Derek said. 3 mirrored modules, each isolated offline storage, full metadata preserved. Nothing can touch it now. A long silence followed. Both understood the stakes. Outside the glass, the city gleamed, oblivious to the silent war unfolding within its tallest tower. Claire finally spoke. Then we wait, but we act decisively when the moment arrives. Derek nodded, and we'll know it when it comes, because Adrian will leave a trail and this time he can't hide it. Claire's gaze hardened. Good, because I intend to keep my company, and I intend to make sure he knows exactly who's watching. They leaned over the terminal together, reviewing every sequence, mapping patterns, and preparing for the next inevitable confrontation. Every line of code, every timestamp, every authorization was a weapon. Every observation a shield. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, unaware of the invisible war inside Townsend Enterprises. But inside, Claire and Derek had already seized the first moves, laying the foundation for the counterstrike that would decide the company's fate. By mid-morning, Townsend Enterprises hummed with the usual rhythm, employees moving between meetings, phones ringing, emails pinging. From the outside, the company appeared normal. Inside, Claire and Derek were quietly orchestrating the next stage. Claire stood at the glass wall of her office, observing the floor below. Derek handed her a printout from the encrypted module, carefully annotated with timestamps and activity logs. We release this internally first, he said. Targeted circulation, board only, not public yet, Adrian doesn't see it coming. Claire nodded, scanning the sequences. Each entry was precise. Adrian's authorization chain, Ross's manipulated transactions, timestamps showing every step. If even one director reads this, they can't ignore it, she said. Derek leaned closer. Exactly, and the pattern is unmistakable. It's not just a mistake, it's coordinated, intentional. He engineered this to remove you. She exhaled slowly. He underestimated the human element, not just the data, the observation. Emails went out quietly, encrypted, labeled strictly as board review only. Every director received the package simultaneously, with a note from Claire. For immediate review, critical operational evidence enclosed. Please confirm receipt. Derek watched from the doorway, scanning the floor for Adrian. The COO remained calm on the surface, but subtle tells gave him away. A fingertip brushing against the laptop edge more than necessary, a slight tightening of his jaw, eyes flicking to his left as if sensing an unseen observer. Claire, Derek said, he knows something, off, he feels it but he doesn't know what. Good, she said, let him wonder, let him act, every move he makes now is under observation. Minutes passed, a few directors acknowledged receipt, replying simply, understood, reviewing. Each reply was logged by Derek. Every acknowledgement, every timestamp recorded for further verification. Adrian made his move. He called a quick meeting with Ross under the pretense of operational review. Derek and Claire watched as Ross presented fabricated figures, unaware that each screen, each spreadsheet, each approval was being silently compared to the captured data. Do you see it? Claire whispered. Derek nodded. Adrian paused mid-explanation, caught in the subtle trap. He could sense the inconsistencies, but with the board receiving the evidence simultaneously, he had no room to maneuver. Every step he took could be traced, every decision documented. Claire's calm shifted into controlled intensity. Derek, we document everything. Every word, every action, every attempt to mislead. It's all evidence, make it airtight. Derek activated additional logging protocols. Screenshots, activity traces, digital timestamps, each element meticulously catalogued. By the time Adrian and Ross left the room, the evidence was irrefutable. Claire leaned back. Now we wait, the board has the proof, they can't ignore it. Adrian and Ross don't know what's coming. Derek watched her, recognizing the same sharp precision that had allowed her to build an empire. And when the board acts, he asked. She turned, eyes cold with resolve. Then we strike, decisively, publicly if needed, but on our terms. Outside, employees continued their routines, oblivious to the silent power play unfolding above. The first public move had been made, the trap was set, and Adrian, for all his authority, had walked straight into it without realizing it. The boardroom was pristine, intimidating, polished wood, leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the city. 12 directors sat around the table, eyes sharp, tension palpable. At one end, Claire took her seat with quiet authority. At the other, Adrian and Ross tried to appear composed, though subtle tells betrayed their nerves. Derek remained near the back, keeping close watch, ready to intervene if necessary. "Let's begin," the chairman said. Papers shuffled, folders clicked open, but before Adrian could speak, Claire rose. "I'd like to address the recent concerns regarding operational and financial irregularities," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "Before anyone acts on rumors or assumptions, I want to present the verified evidence." Derek slid the first set of printouts across the table. Metadata reports, time-stamped logs, digital trails, every forgery Adrian and Ross had attempted was documented, airtight and undeniable. "Every document submitted over the past month has been verified," Claire continued. "The discrepancies originated from deliberate manipulations. Ross attempted to misclassify operational expenses. Adrian forged approvals to cover those actions. The chain of evidence is complete." Adrian's face tightened, a faint twitch at the corner of his mouth. Ross shifted uncomfortably. Neither could interrupt, the proof was irrefutable. Directors leaned forward, reading, checking, absorbing the scope of the evidence. One director finally spoke, voice low but firm. "These are serious breaches. If accurate, this is beyond simple mismanagement." Another nodded. "And the metadata confirms timestamps, digital fingerprints, and account activity consistent with your report." Claire didn't flinch. "Exactly. The unauthorized actions were coordinated to create a pretext for my removal. All evidence points directly to Adrian and Ross." Derek watched silently, hands ready to hand over additional documentation if needed. The air was thick with anticipation. Every pair of eyes turned toward the accused. Adrian tried to argue. "These are just interpretations, circumstantial." Claire cut him off, voice icy. "Interpretation requires ambiguity. There is none here. The logs, the timestamps, the files, every step is documented, every action traceable. You were caught attempting to fabricate operational truth." A hush fell over the room. Even Ross seemed defeated, knowing his defenses had been dismantled. Derek observed the subtle expressions: disbelief, anger, resignation. The chairman cleared his throat. "Given this evidence, the board must act. Adrian, Ross, your positions are hereby suspended pending further investigation. Security will escort you from the premises immediately." Adrian's jaw tightened, Ross's shoulders slumped. Claire remained seated, calm, unshaken. Derek exhaled quietly, mission accomplished. "Effective immediately," Claire said, voice firm. "Townsend Enterprises operates with integrity. Corruption and deception will not be tolerated. Our company's strength comes from transparency and accountability. That begins here now." One director leaned forward, approval evident. "This decisive action sends a clear message. Leadership is restored, and operational integrity is protected." Outside, the city carried on, unaware of the storm that had just passed within the tallest tower. But inside, Claire had reclaimed control, supported by Derek's precision and vigilance. The board's confidence had shifted irrevocably, and the company's future was secure, at least for now. After the boardroom storm, the atmosphere at Townsend Enterprises shifted. The usual buzz of the office now carried a sense of relief mixed with cautious optimism. Employees returned to their tasks, but whispers circulated. Everyone knew something monumental had just happened, even if they didn't know all the details. Claire stayed at her desk longer than usual, surveying the office. Derek had cleared the immediate threats but didn't leave her side. He observed quietly, occasionally pointing out lingering issues in the workflow, soft suggestions she'd consider without a word. "You've stabilized the immediate crisis," Derek said, leaning against her desk. "But there's still cleanup. Communication lines, audit confirmations, operational reviews. The board will want weekly updates for the foreseeable future. Claire nodded, her green eyes sharp but not weary. I know, but it's manageable now, we've taken control. The company can't be blindsided like this again. Derek glanced at her, noticing subtle tension in her shoulders. You need a break, he said. Even an hour without phone calls, emails or spreadsheets. You've been running at full throttle for days. She shook her head, half smiling. I've built companies, I've faced worse than a couple of corrupt executives, but maybe you're right, I need perspective, not just fire drills. Perspective helps decisions, Derek said quietly. Your focus is sharper when you've eaten, rested and thought clearly. You can't operate at 100% on adrenaline alone. Claire considered this. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and let out a small laugh, genuine and unguarded. You've spent weeks running around, keeping me grounded. I suppose it's my turn to let someone else manage the chaos for a while. Derek smiled faintly, though his eyes remained vigilant. That's the advantage of having someone you can trust. You don't have to do everything alone. You're strong, but even strong leaders need support. A pause hung between them, quiet and heavy. Then Claire reached over, picking up a folder Derek had been sorting. You've done more than just support, she said softly. You've protected this company, me, and the integrity of everything we've built. That's not something I forget. Derek shrugged, keeping his usual measured tone. I do my job. I spot patterns, correct mistakes, and make sure the right moves are made. You just happen to be the one steering the ship. She gave a subtle, thoughtful nod. And I'd be lost without that perspective. We've weathered the storm, but there's work ahead, restoring trust, rebuilding processes, ensuring transparency. The board, employees, investors, they all need to see the company's stability. Derek pulled up another set of reports, ready to guide her through the next steps. We'll create clear operational protocols, document every decision, and continue monitoring for anomalies. This isn't over yet, but the foundation is solid. Claire exhaled slowly, a rare moment of vulnerability showing. It's strange, she said quietly. After all this, I feel lighter, not because the problem is gone, it isn't, but because I'm not facing it alone anymore. Derek nodded. Exactly, you've built an empire, Claire, but even empires need trusted allies. Someone who sees what others overlook, who stands beside you rather than above or below. That's the difference between survival and collapse. She glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. Then I suppose we keep building, together. Yes, Derek said, together. Outside the windows, the city moved on. Lights flickering, traffic flowing, life continuing. Inside, Claire and Derek sat side by side, reviewing reports, planning next steps, but also quietly acknowledging a new trust, a partnership forged in fire, strengthened by vigilance and anchored in shared purpose. The company had survived the storm. And for the first time in years, Claire allowed herself to see that surviving was only the beginning. Rebuilding and thriving would be the next chapter. The office lights dimmed, but Claire didn't leave immediately. She sat on the edge of her desk, shoes off, the hum of the city below a quiet backdrop. Derek, carrying his laptop bag, paused in the doorway. You should go home, he said. You've earned a break. Claire shook her head. Home feels too quiet, too disconnected. I need to process everything, and somehow being here, still surrounded by the company, helps me make sense of it. Derek stepped closer. Processing is important, but so is perspective. Even leaders need moments away from the grind, it's part of staying sharp. She looked at him, a faint smile breaking through the usual professional mask. You've been keeping me grounded for weeks. Maybe it's time I let someone else manage the chaos for a while. He smiled lightly. Exactly, and I'll make sure it's done without interference. No distractions, no crises, just a chance to recharge. Claire leaned back, her gaze drifting to the floor-to-ceiling windows. You know, when this all started, I thought I had to handle everything myself. Trusting someone, letting someone stand beside me, felt impossible. Now I see that it's the strongest move I've made. Derek nodded. It's not weakness to share the burden, it's strategy. You can only lead effectively when the people you rely on are competent and loyal, and you've built that here. She let out a slow breath, almost a laugh. I feel lighter, not because the crisis is gone, it's not, but because I'm not carrying it alone anymore, and that makes all the difference. Derek reached over, placing a hand on the folder of reports he had been sorting. The work continues, but the foundation is solid. We'll rebuild processes, ensure transparency, and restore confidence, step by step. Claire's green eyes softened, rare vulnerability showing through. And we do it together. Yes, he said simply, together. For a long moment neither spoke. The city lights blinked below and the quiet between them carried weight and reassurance. Claire finally shifted, pulling a sweater over her shoulders. Maybe tonight we take a real break, step away from spreadsheets, approvals and emails. Just be. Derek tilted his head, noticing the subtle relief in her posture. I think that's overdue, you've earned it. They left the office together, side by side, the night city stretching out below. For the first time in weeks, Claire allowed herself to feel not just the relief of survival, but the possibility of balance, of human connection, of life beyond the constant pressure of leadership. As they walked toward the elevator, Claire glanced at Derek. We've faced the worst, and yet it feels like a beginning, not an ending. Derek smiled quietly. It's always a beginning when you're building something real, the work, the trust, the partnership, that's what lasts. She squeezed his hand lightly. Then let's make sure we get it right, together. And for the first time that evening, the weight of command felt shared, not solitary. They stepped into the elevator, leaving the office lights behind, carrying with them a new rhythm, a balance between life, leadership, and the quiet strength of trust. The museum lobby was alive with glittering lights and murmurs of the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers reflected in polished marble floors, and everywhere, attendees moved with practiced elegance, sipping champagne and exchanging polished pleasantries. Tonight was supposed to be about appearances, but for Claire and Derek, it was something else entirely. Claire entered first, a midnight blue gown hugging her silhouette with understated authority. Every head subtly turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Derek followed, perfectly fitted suit in place of his usual borrowed attire, walking confidently by her side. Their entrance was unspoken confirmation. They were a team, aligned, unshakable. A photographer pushed forward, camera poised, but Derek subtly positioned himself between Claire and the lens. Miss Townsend has no comment, he said firmly. The shutter clicked, capturing their presence without granting intrusion. Claire glanced at him, a fleeting acknowledgement in her green eyes. Trust, silent but absolute. They made their way toward the center of the room, mingling just enough to project presence without distraction. Every board member and investor they passed recognized the shift. The company's leadership was no longer fractured. Whoever had tried to destabilize it had failed. As the evening progressed, whispers became observations. She was poised, confident, and Derek remained near, calm and precise. At one point, an executive approached, questioning a recent rumor, only to be deflected with Claire's quiet authority and Derek's subtle reinforcement. Later, near the balcony overlooking the city lights, the music softened. The ocean breeze drifted through the open doors, carrying a rare quiet amidst the gala's elegance. Claire's hand brushed Derek. You've been steady, she said quietly, almost privately. Tonight, all of this is a statement. Not just to the board, not just to Adrian and Ross, but to everyone watching, we're unbreakable. Derek smiled faintly. It's not just about power, it's about trust, partnership. You faced the storm, but you didn't have to face it alone. Her lips curved into a genuine smile, the kind reserved for moments far from conference tables and spreadsheets. And you'll be there for the next storm too, won't you? Always, he said. Their fingers intertwined naturally, publicly, a quiet declaration that needed no words. As the night progressed, reporters tried to probe, cameras flashed, questions shouted, but Claire and Derek moved as one. Every answer was measured, every gesture intentional. When asked about the company's recent turmoil, Claire's reply was direct and confident. We faced challenges with integrity. Corruption has been removed. Townsend Enterprises is stronger because we confronted the truth. Derek's presence reinforced the statement. No one doubted the alignment, the partnership, or the resolve. Later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the chaos of the gala faded behind them. Lights of the city stretched endlessly, proof that life moved forward, regardless of the storms faced inside glass towers. Claire exhaled, quiet relief in her stance. Do you remember that day on the beach? She asked, voice soft. Derek nodded. I remember, everything started there. You caught those papers, she said. And you didn't just fix a problem, you changed the course of everything. Not just the company, but my perspective on trust and partnership. Derek smiled faintly. Sometimes it's not about chance, it's about paying attention, seeing what matters, choosing to stand beside someone when it counts. Claire squeezed his hand. And I choose you always. They leaned into the moment, the night sky above, the city lights below. A quiet victory, not in headlines, not in applause, but in the trust forged and the partnership declared. Inside, the gala continued, but for Claire and Derek, the night marked something far greater than public appearances. Survival, resolution, and the start of building something stronger, together. The city lights faded behind them as Claire and Derek returned to the beach house where it had all begun. The ocean stretched out in endless darkness, waves softly crashing against the shore. Inside, the house was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the gala and the boardroom battles. Claire changed into a simple sweater and jeans, casual, unguarded. Derek noticed the difference immediately. She looked younger, freer, more like the person she had been before building an empire. They sat on the deck, legs dangling over the edge, listening to the rhythmic pull of the tide. The sky above slowly filled with stars, each one a quiet reminder that the world kept moving, even after storms. "I keep thinking about that first day," Claire said softly. "When you caught my papers on the beach, you tested me and I didn't even realize it, but I needed to know if someone could see what others missed." Derek leaned back, letting the cool night air settle between them. "It's habit. I've been analyzing financial chaos since I was 23. It's second nature now." Claire tilted her head, green eyes reflecting starlight. "You didn't just fix a problem, you built something better than I expected. That's rare." Derek smiled faintly. "There's a difference between fixing and making right. Fixing puts things back as they were. Making it right creates something stronger than before." She reached over and touched his hand. "Then that's what we're doing together." The waves continued their quiet rhythm, and for the first time in weeks, both allowed themselves to simply exist. No spreadsheets, no reports, no threats, just the knowledge that they had survived the worst and come out stronger. They talked little, but each word, each gesture carried weight. Derek passed her a mug of tea, she offered a small laugh, and silence became a shared comfort. Here they didn't need titles, hierarchy, or defenses. Here they were just two people learning to trust, to rest, to breathe. Claire finally whispered, "It feels like a beginning, not an ending." Derek nodded. "It is, every storm ends. But the work of building something lasting, that's just beginning." They watched the stars in companionable silence, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Not as CEO and analyst, not as colleagues, but as partners in every sense that mattered. Morning came slowly at the beach house. The sun painted the horizon in shades of gold and pink, reflecting off the water in a gentle shimmer. Claire sat on the deck, mug in hand, hair loose and casual. Derek joined her, carrying breakfast in a small tray. "This is a proper breakfast," he said with a smile, setting it down. "No takeout containers, no late-night stress, just food." Claire laughed, a short, genuine sound. "I didn't realize I could enjoy something so simple after weeks of chaos." They ate in silence at first, savoring the calm and the absence of urgency. The world outside existed, but here time slowed, allowing them to process, reflect, and breathe. After a moment, Claire looked at Derek. "You know, that day on the beach, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't noticed those papers, if you had just walked away." Derek shook his head. "It wasn't chance, you needed someone to see what others overlooked. I was just paying attention, choosing to act." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "And I needed someone I could trust, someone willing to stand beside me." She reached out, touching his hand again. "I think that's the strongest lesson I've learned. You don't have to do it all alone. Trust, partnership, they're stronger than isolation, stronger than control." Derek smiled faintly, eyes meeting hers. "And I've learned the same. Support isn't weakness. Vulnerability isn't failure. Standing together is what matters." They spent the day on the deck, talking, watching the waves, and letting the calm settle. Small moments, coffee, laughter, shared silence, became symbols of something greater: balance, connection, and the power of partnership. Claire eventually stood, stretching, hair tousled by the ocean breeze. "I have plans," she said, smiling. "First, a real vacation, no work, no interruptions, just time to breathe. Then when we return, I'm restructuring the board, improving transparency and ensuring accountability. And finally, a proper dinner. Somewhere we can enjoy it without spreadsheets or emails in sight." Derek nodded. "Sounds perfect, and after that?" She turned, eyes sparkling with determination and warmth. "After that, we build something better, together, for the company, for ourselves, for everything that matters." He squeezed her hand, a quiet affirmation. "I'm not going anywhere." They watched the ocean, letting the sun rise higher, illuminating the world around them. The storm had passed. The crisis was resolved. And in the stillness, amidst the waves and the light, a new chapter began, one defined not by power or titles, but by trust, partnership, and shared purpose. For Claire and Derek, the future wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving together with clarity, strength, and the quiet certainty that they could face anything side by side.